come here. Wait a minute, Rich, do the gun again. Hey, Tony, come here. Stick up.
Hey, baby, get a beer for the house. One beer. Woo!
Can't tell what no motherfucker is down here. No, because you motherfuckers look white, be black.
Have you ever wondered what it truly means to change an entire art form? To shift the foundation so deeply that every single person who comes after you is forced to acknowledge your impact? Because today, we're talking about someone who did exactly that. Someone whose influence echoes in every comedy club, every stand-up special, every performer who dares to turn personal pain into universal laughter. Today, we are diving into the life, the chaos, the genius, and the emotional firestorm that was Richard Pryor. And before we go any further, if you love stories about legends who shaped culture, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, because the journey we're about to take is one you won't want to miss. Let me ask you something. When you think of a comedian, what comes to mind? Jokes? Punchlines? Maybe a funny story or two. But what if I told you there was a comedian who went far beyond that? Someone who didn't just make people laugh, but made them confront reality. Someone who didn't run from the darkness. He dragged it onto the stage and forced the world to look at it. Have you ever seen a performer do that? Richard Pryor didn't just tell jokes. He told the truth. Richard Franklin Lennox, Thomas Pryor III, was born in Peoria, Illinois, in 1940. Into an environment many would never escape from. Poverty, violence, instability. A childhood surrounded by the kind of trauma that breaks most people early. And yet somehow, within this chaos, a spark began to form. Because that's the thing about Pryor. The world tried to silence him, but instead, it shaped him into one of the boldest voices to ever step on a stage. Now think about this for a second. How many great artists come from comfortable lives? Not many. And that leads me to ask you, do you believe that hardship creates greatness? Because Pryor's entire body of work is an argument that it does. From a young age, he learned to observe people, to interpret their struggles, to pick up on the absurdity hidden inside pain. And eventually, he realized that humor was not just an escape, it was a lifeline. He joined the U.S. Army, worked odd jobs, performed in small clubs, and slowly built a reputation. But early Pryor was different. In the beginning, he tried to be clean-cut, safe, polished, militating Bill Cosby's family-friendly style. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. And have you ever watched someone trying to be something they're not? That's exactly what was happening. The audience liked him, but the fire wasn't there yet. Something was missing, something real. And then came the moment. A night in Las Vegas. On stage, Pryor froze. Stopped mid-performance, looked out into the crowd, and realized all at once that he wasn't being himself. Imagine that years into a promising career, standing under the spotlight, suddenly feeling like a stranger in your own skin. So what did he do? He walked off. He left the stage, the club, the persona. And from that moment on, Richard Pryor would never again hide behind a mask. When he returned as himself, raw, vulnerable, fearless. And the comedy world has never been the same. But let me ask you, have you ever had a moment in your life where you realized you were pretending? Where you knew you needed to reinvent yourself? Because Pryor didn't just reinvent his comedy. He reinvented who he was allowed to be. His stand-up evolved into something no one had seen before. He tore down walls with honesty so sharp it left audiences breathless. He talked about poverty, drug addiction, racism, sex, family dysfunction, all the things polite society pretended didn't exist. He exposed not only the world's contradictions, but his own. That's why people connected with him so deeply. His comedy wasn't polished. It wasn't cute, it was human. And that humanity, those flaws, that truthfully became his superpower. Pryor's ability to shift from humor to heartbreak in a single moment was unmatched. 1 minute the audience was roaring with laughter. The next, they were silent, absorbing the weight of what he had lived through. He spoke in characters, voices, movements, transforming himself into anyone and anything to make a point. Dogs, cops, addicts, lovers, villains, he embodied them all. And he did it so seamlessly that it didn't feel like an act. It felt like a confession. So tell me, when was the last time a comedian made you feel something deeper than laughter? But Pryor's genius was not without cost. His life spiraled into constant conflict, drug abuse, destructive relationships, emotional instability. Fame didn't heal him. Money didn't save him. If anything, both accelerated his self-destruction. And then came one of the most infamous and heartbreaking moments in entertainment history. June 9th, 1980. After days of heavy drug use, Pryor, in a haze of confusion and desperation, set himself on fire. Flames engulfed his body as he ran down the street, screaming, burning, nearly dying in front of the world. Newspapers reported it with shock. Hollywood whispered about it in disbelief. Fans mourned the tragedy unfolding before them. Most people would never recover from something like that. They would disappear physically, emotionally, spiritually. But Richard Pryor wasn't most people. Months later, he returned to the stage, broken but alive, scarred but standing. And do you know what he did? He made one of the most brilliant comedy routines ever performed about the fire, about the drugs, about his near-death experience. He turned the darkest moment of his life into laughter, into connection. Ask yourself honestly, how many people have the strength to do that? To face their own destruction and then turn it into something meaningful? That's why Pryor became more than a comedian. He became a cultural force. Every major comedian after him, Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart, points back to Pryor. Not just because he was funny, but because he was fearless. Because he proved that the truth is the most powerful form of comedy. He didn't just push boundaries, he erased them. Beyond the stage, Pryor made history in film and television. He co-wrote with Mel Brooks. He broke barriers on TV. He starred in hit movies. He won Emmys, Grammys, and respect across the industry. Yet, even as his star rose, his body began to fail. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, he lost mobility, strength, independence, but never his spirit. Even in decline, he continued performing, continued speaking, continued fighting. His final shows were delivered from a wheelchair, but still filled with that unmistakable spark. Still honest, still raw, still Pryor. And this leads to a question I want you to reflect on. What makes someone truly legendary? Their talent, their success, or their resilience? Because Richard Pryor embodied all three. He died in 2005, but his influence is as alive as ever. You can hear him in every comedian who dares to talk about taboo topics, in every performer who blends comedy with vulnerability, in every artist who believes that honesty, no matter how painful, is worth sharing. Richard Pryor didn't just tell jokes. He told the truth. and the truth, when delivered by a master, is unforgettable. So now I want to hear from you. Have you watched any of his specials? Live on the Sunset Strip, Here and Now, Wanted, Live in Concert. Which one hit you the hardest? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just a story about a comedian. It's a story about a man who turned suffering into strength, chaos into creativity, and truth into legacy. And if you want more deep dives into the lives of artists who shaped the world, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to remember what real comedy looks like. Because the story of Richard Pryor may end here, but the impact he left behind, that story is still being written.